Hey everyone, welcome to week 4. Before we get into the topics for week 4 part A, I do want to cover a couple schedule related things. So just as a reminder, the midterm exam is on Tuesday, May 7th. There are details about that posted on Canvas, but if you want any clarification or just want to double check stuff, feel free to post the discussion forum or send me an email. One other thing that I do want to point out, the programming assignment for week 4 for this week, it is due after the midterm. So it's due it is due a week fully after the midterm, which means you have basically 2 weeks to do it. That said, the content that is covered in the week 4 programming assignment is still fair game for the midterm. So my recommendation for that would be to do the majority of the assignment if you can before the midterm exam. And then if there's any last minute, tweaks or additions or minor bug fixes that you want to do, that is something you could save for after the midterm exam. But you should do the majority of it before, just because the content on it is going to be on the midterm. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions about that, deadlines, whatever, let me know. Alright, let's get into it. So for part A of week 4, these are the topics we are going to cover. We are going to cover Boolean values, we are going to cover comparisons, conditional statements, and while loops. Really quickly, let's start with a review. So very beginning of the quarter, we talked about types. So remember, every value that you store in code is categorized into some sort of data type. And this type determines how the data is stored in the computer and what you can do with that data. So far we've talked about strings, and we've talked about numerical types, specifically integers and floating point values. Today we are going to talk about a new type. So this type is type Bool, B-O-O-L, Bool. It's short for Boolean. So kind of the nice thing about this type is there's literally only 2 values you can have. All the other types that we talked about, there's, almost an infinite amount of values. Well, there is for numbers, but not for strings. But for Bool types, there's only 2. And those types are true and false. A couple things I do want to point out about this Bool type. To write one of these Bool types in your code, you just type the word true or you type the word false, but the T or the F need to be capitalized, and they are not strings, so make sure you do not put quotes around them. It's just true and false as it's shown right here on the slide. So just like all the other types that we've talked about, there's certain operations that you can apply to these Bool types that you can do with these true and these falses. So let's talk about some of these Bool operators. So here I'm assuming that these variables x and y contain values of type Bool, meaning x is either true or false, and same thing with y. So Bool operators that we're going to cover are and, or, and not. And the idea is you can combine multiple Bool types with an and or, a not just sort of flips it, and then it will give you another Bool type back. So for example, if you do x and y, and again this is assuming that x and y are both, either true or false, x and y will give you true if x and y are both true. If one of them is false, or both of them are false, x and y will be false. So with and, they both have to be true, and you get true back. If you have one false or both false, you get false back. Alright, with or, if you have x or y, that is going to be true if either of them are true. So if x is true, x or y will be true. If y is true, x or y will be true. If they're both true, that will also be true. The only way or will give you false is if both are false. So if you have false or false, you will get false back. Alright, and then not x, again assuming x is either true or false, is basically just going to give you the opposite. So if you say not true, you get false back. If you say not false, you get true back. So again, just a little bit more in detail. So if you have and, this is one of the Bool operators, and true will give you true back. So again, remember with and, if they are both true, you get a true back. The second one of them is false. So for example, if you have true and false or false and true, you get false on both of those. And again, if they are both false, you're also going to get false back. So again, the rule is with and, they both have to be true for the whole thing to be true. Alright, and then or, again, the rule with or is only false if they are both false. So if they're both true, you get true. If you have true or false or true, you're also going to get true. So if either or are true, you'll get true back. Again, the only way you get false with an or is if they are both false. And then not is kind of the easy one, right? If you say not true, well, then it's false. If you say not false, then it's going to be true. Alright, so let's just run through a couple examples together. So here we have a variable assignment statement. Variable name is our value, and we are giving it the Bool value true. So when we print our value and false, that's basically saying true and false, right? Because our value has true in it. And again, the rule is with and, they both have to be true for the whole thing to be true. Now in this case, we have a false, which means that first one is going to be false. Alright, the second print statement, our value or false. Again, our value is true. True or false. Remember with or, if one of them is true, the whole thing is going to be true. So true or false gives us true. And then not our value, well, that's just going to give us the opposite. Our value is true, so we will get false. Alright, here's a couple more examples. I recommend you trying these out on paper, pausing the video now, and then coming back when you are ready to look at the results. Alright, so hopefully you took some time to work this out by hand. Let's go ahead and run through these answers. So the first one's going to be false, second one is true, and that last one is going to be false. Let's work through these together, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So with these Boolean statements, when I'm writing them out by hand, just to kind of keep track of what's going on, I'll usually just fill in with either a T or an F, right? A T for true or an F for false, and that's just, you know, a shorthand sort of writing notes on paper. But again, when you are typing this in code, you have to fully type out true or fully type out false. So just make sure that, you know, you're not typing T and F, even though I'm writing on these notes just T and F. Alright, so this first one we're going to be printing not, and these parentheses do make a difference, so keep that in mind. So not X or Y, X is true, and then or Y is false. Alright, so the parentheses here mean the same as parentheses in a math expression. So if you have stuff in parentheses, you want to evaluate that first, which means we are first going to evaluate this part. So true or false. So again, the rule is with or, if one of them is true, that whole thing is going to be true. So this whole thing is true. So then we can evaluate the rest of it. So we have not true, which is going to give us false, which is this part right here. So this first part, false. Awesome, cool. Now let's talk about the second one. We have X, which is true, and parentheses X or Y. So again, X is true, Y is false. Cool. Alright, same idea again. You want to do the stuff in the parentheses first. We saw in the previous example that this is going to be true. Cool. So we have true and true, is what we're evaluating here. And again, the rule is with and, if both of them are true, the whole thing is going to be true. So this will give us a true back right here. Alright, let's do this last one. This last one's a little bit more complicated. So we have not x is true, or parentheses, not y, which is false, and y, which is false. Alright, so we're going to do parentheses first. And here, just going left to right, you start with not f. So not false is true. And then we have true and false. True and false, well again, the rule is with and, they both have to be true for the whole thing to be true. And they're not, right? This one's false. So this whole thing is going to be false. Alright, now we're looking over here. Again, go left to right. So we're going to do this part first. Not true. Not true. This is false. So the whole thing we have is false or false. Well, the rule is with or. If they're both false, whole thing's going to be false. So that's how we get this false here. If you have any questions about these examples, feel free to post to the discussion forum or send me an email.